Welcome to the Momentum Lifestyle Project podcast. I'm your host, Dylan Ruse, and here at Momentum, we aim to challenge and champion committed men who are ready to take charge of their lives by mastering their mind, optimizing physical potential, and unlocking their power to find their mission. Whilst our work is predominantly with men, we hope that this podcast will provide value to all who choose to listen. So without further ado, let's jump in.
And a huge shout out to our first sponsor here, Be Spunky, the Australian men's health brand designed to support you to be the best you can be. Now, Blake Genoa and myself have been using this for quite some time now and absolutely love it. This product is something that we take every single day and drastically improves our training. But the one thing that I've noticed is my recovery time and the way that I feel the next day after training is so much better when I'm taking Be Spunky than when I'm not. And it is scientifically formulated to support optimum male hormone levels vital for strength, drive, and overall well-being. So big thanks to Be Spunky. You can find the link in the description below.
Samantha, welcome. Happy Wednesday, your Wednesday morning.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
I am going to rip into all things female relationships, love, sexuality, anywhere the conversation takes us. But for those kind of new to you, can you give a little 2 to 3 minute summary of life as you know it?
Yeah, I need to get better at this because I forget that this is like always a piece of
I get it.
when you share your work with everybody. I need to nail my synopsis of who I am and what I do. So essentially, well, what I do is I'm a life transformation coach. I coach particularly women through life challenges, career, money, building businesses, love, all those types of things. So I got started in this industry through my own personal development journey when I was in a place really struggling primarily with body image and my relationship to my body and myself, the way that I saw myself. I'd always sort of been like a petite, sort of smaller person. And then as you do, you grow up and you become a woman and things change. And I actually went and I studied abroad in Europe. So I lived in Europe for a semester of my time in university. And I was just like full throttle enjoying life, traveling, eating all the things. Like I was drunk 3-4 nights a week, just like, living my best life at 21 years old. And I guess the aftermath of that was me coming home and looking in the mirror and not realizing what the effect that was going to have on my physical body and in turn on my emotional body and on my mental health, because I started to go down this weird space that I'd never entered into before of really disliking the way that I looked and trying to force and control and push that into something that I thought that it should be. So my journey into personal development started there primarily with like body image and trying to find a way to lean into loving myself better instead of trying to like force or push or hate myself, I guess you could say, into a version of myself that I loved. And so that's how I got into all of like the books and the podcasts and, this content that has changed so many of our lives. And the more that I learned and studied and integrated, the more that I just wanted to share everything that I was experiencing and learning with other women, because I know that it's something that is so needed in the world for women and men alike. So that's kind of how I got to this place. I'm joining you from Spain. So for anybody wondering how that, trip abroad to Europe turned out, I actually ended up accidentally, I like to say, falling in love while I was here at 21. And then I went back to school and I finished my last year at school and I was kind of like long distance with this Spanish guy. And then when I graduated, I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to I'm just gonna go back. I'm gonna pack my bags. I'm gonna decline my corporate job offers. Like, I'm just gonna go and I'm gonna see, what there is there, what's in
Mm.
store. So I came here on the pretense that I would just be here for a year, just to explore, to travel a little bit more, to go deeper into learning the language and becoming fluent in Spanish and dating this person from the same city, from the same, continent at least. And that turned into, I just now entered my 6th year here in Spain and we're still together. So there you go.
I like it. Because obviously I think you said 21, that was when you went on a little adventure. What does that look like now? Because I know adventure is a big part of your world, as is surrendering. And I find this space fascinating, both, in terms of the women that I work with and talk with, and also like the men and their inability to, it seems a very kind of feminine trait, which I'm sure we'll kind of explore, but the power of surrendering to kind of what unfolds. So what does that look like for you now, and how is that potentially different to the way that you used to go about it?
Yeah, surrender and letting go is, like you said, it's so fascinating. It's such an interesting topic to kind of dive
Mm,
into and unpack why we struggle with it so much and why we're so resistant to it. And I think, like, in my journey, it's interesting because I would say that I've always sort of leaned more towards the side of masculine energy that we spoke about on my podcast, of
yeah.
really wanting to control the outcomes of things, always having a plan, being
Mm,
really organized. um, for anybody listening that's into astrology, I have a Virgo placement, so that makes a lot of sense. I'm also a Sagittarius, which explains why I, just moved my life to another country. But anyway, I would say that that was kind of my nature naturally, was okay, let's plan for this, prepare for this, let's organize it. Like, if you watch me pack a suitcase, and you will just know that I'm like, all the things we must prepare for all possible outcomes and everything. And this needs to be rolled and put in this area and put this here, there. So it's fascinating for me even to look at my own life and be like, but then I just let everything go
mm,
suddenly and was like, oh, this degree that, just cost hundreds of thousands of dollars and I spent years getting, and all of, the approval of all these people and my parents and what will they think and all of that. I just let it
mm.
go. And I was like, I'm just going to go do
Yeah.
this thing. So it's so interesting. And I think the part of that for me is this sort of like sacral authority that I have. I've
Mm,
also been really in tune with my gut knowing, or my intuition. So I have those, we all have those two sides of us, but it's interesting to look at my life and the ways in which some areas I lean more one way, and then other times I lean more the other way. And I
mm,
just go with my gut, and I'm like, I know this is right for me. I know this to be true for me. I have to do this. And I just go and I do it. And I'm able to let go of all those other things in the name of following that intuitive ping. So yeah, it's interesting. I don't have, the
mm.
answer, I guess, per se, of like how that unfolds, but I've definitely seen it go both ways in my life.
Brilliant. One of the things I'm fascinated in, kind of almost sitting on the fence with, spending plenty of time with both men and women, is essentially the gaslighting and the impact that that can have on women doubting themselves, and obviously doubting their kind of intuition and gut, and that's such at such an early age, before even the kind of gaslighting that a boyfriend or a husband might do. What's your, I guess, recommendation potentially in terms of both speaking to the feminine and how to reconnect to that, and potentially the masculine? Because I think, if I look at gaslighting and a, big scope of men, they don't know what the fuck gaslighting is. And secondly, it's not coming from a malice place. It's, often indoctrinated from such an early age. So what does that look like? How do women come back to their truth? And potentially from, sitting on the women's side of fence, what does it look like, or how can men kind of support that, or work through potentially traits that aren't necessarily that healthy.
Yeah, I love that you said that it doesn't come from a place of malice because, I mean, depending, right? If you have
Mm,
a narcissist or someone that's really
yeah.
great at manipulating, they can kind of utilize that tactic.
Mm,
But normally, I would agree with you and say that some of the gaslighting that happens in relationship is just a misunderstanding of
mm,
what's going on, of the way that the lens that I wear and the way that I see the world versus the lens that you wear and the way that you see the world. And it's about these two humans being able to find common ground in the way that they're viewing a situation or an experience or something that's happening. So I think it's important to, first of all, understand and recognize and remember that we are all living very different realities from every single person around us, right? The two of us could live the exact same experience. We could be in the same argument. And my recount of what happened in that argument and your recount of what happened in that argument could be totally different. And it doesn't, I think we need to move away from this idea that one person is right and one person is wrong, that there is one factual version of truth. And then there's fabrication and lies and something that's untrue, which is I think what causes this gaslighting of if I am in my feminine energy and I'm really connected to my emotions and you say something that brings up a feeling in me and I express, when you say that, it makes me feel this. And they say, well, I never said that, or I didn't mean that, or you're inventing what happened, or whatever. They're dismissing my emotionality or what my
mm,
experience of that moment was. Um, is, it's not that I'm right and you're wrong, or that you're right and I'm wrong. Like, we have to understand that there's space for both. And so we need both people in the relationship to be able to find that kind of common ground. And so I think I would say, from a female perspective, if you are a little bit more in touch with your emotions and your emotionality and this kind of like perceptive side of the things that are happening versus just taking words at face value,
mm,
is to communicate with your partner about, when you say this or when you do this, it makes me feel blank, and
mm,
explain that I know that this doesn't maybe make sense to you. I know that maybe you don't have the same experience. That's okay. But I want to share my experience with you of what it feels like for me in this moment, in this conversation, in this argument, whatever. Right. That's really important. And from, let's say like the masculine perspective, whoever in the relationship is taking on that energy of really being logical and factual and like, well, this is what I said and this is what I meant. So there's no other interpretation possible to this. And that's just creating things out of thin air, is to, again, the same thing, understand that the other person's lens that they're wearing, the reality that they're viewing is different. Be open to understanding that emotions can come through, interpretations can come through that aren't the same as yours. And also be open to getting more connected and in tune with your own emotionality and your own
mm,
emotional experience of thinking about, when your partner says X or does Y, what is the emotion that arises in your body? Because I think when the masculine energy can become more connected to that feminine experience of, oh, this makes me feel this way, or it brings up this sort of emotion, they're able to better understand and find that common ground with their partner when it's happening for somebody else.
mm.
Because so often it's like there's a difficulty in understanding how the female or the feminine energy is feeling in that situation, because they're disconnected and they don't actually even know how they're feeling.
Good answer. I like that a lot. What's from a communication point of view, and you've done a lot of work, and there's a real ease in your communication from the small snippets of work that I've done with you. What would be the difference in your communication, say the first 3 years of your relationship to the last 3 years?
That's a really good question. I'm going to reflect on this in real time. and just kind of share as it comes through.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the first half or the early stages of my relationship, one, I was still quite young. I mean, I'm still young, but this relationship, the current relationship that I'm in, like I mentioned, began when I was 21 years old, right? Not a lot of 21-year-olds we know that are fully integrated and, really understanding all of these concepts and self-aware to that level. So I think I was a lot more reactive. That's for sure. I didn't understand. I didn't even know what the word trigger was. I think that's like a buzzword now, but back
Yeah, it
then
is
I
massively.
wasn't aware of that word. So I would feel triggered and then I would be reactive to that trigger because there was no awareness around, oh, this is triggering me. I feel an emotional reaction rising. Let's sit with that for a second, take a pause, understand what's happening. Like there was none of that. It was just words were said and then words were word vomited back of, anger or frustration. So definitely was a lot more reactive. It's also interesting in this relationship because it's bilingual and there's such a contrast of culture and societal norms and like in any relationship, I think the way someone grows up to you and the way that they view love and relationships is so different. So there's always going to be that contrast. But then there's like this added complicated layer of the fact that like our native languages are totally different. Our cultures are totally different. The way that we were raised and went to school and educated is totally different. So yeah, there was like just a lot more um tension and sort of like volleying back and forth of like trigger. Like you trigger me, I trigger you. You trigger me, I trigger you. If I feel hurt, I'm gonna hurt you back. Ooh, like I cringe at that. And now because of the larger self-awareness that I have and that my partner also has, like there's just I would say like the pace of um arguments or anytime we're feeling disconnected is so much slower, right? When you're unaware, when you have no self-awareness, when you're just reactive, everything goes really quickly, right? Like that volleying back and forth of you say something, I say something is very quick. Whereas now the pace has slowed out a lot and we both sit and pause and think before we say what we're going to say next. And there's just more intentionality behind I feel embarrassed or I feel hurt or I feel upset or I feel unseen. Okay, how do I want to share this with my partner? And there's still, I can feel that piece in me still sometimes where I'm like, "Ugh, I don't want to share this. I just want it to go away, right? I don't want to say like, I feel embarrassed because of this or you hurt me because of this. Like it's so, I can feel myself still being tempted sometimes to just move on, sweep it under the rug. It'll be fine. I'll feel fine in a few hours. It'll go away. But I sit with that and then I force myself to bring it to the table. So there's more openness as well of like, hey, I just wanted to let you know earlier when we were talking about this and you said this, it made me feel this way. And what I need from you right now is this. I've gotten a lot better at that. And I think that's a really valuable skill for both partners to get better at because so often when we're fighting or arguing or being upset or even retracting and ignoring and not communicating is because we have a need. We're hoping that our partner interprets and understands what the need is and that they just come and they meet that. And we have to recognize that our needs are not going to be met unless we share them clearly and we communicate them. Especially like, no offense, I love men, but I think like their ability to intuit what's what someone may need or what a woman may need in that moment is not always the best. It's not always on point, but if they knew, but it's like it's pure because if they knew, they would be so willing to do it. But sometimes they just don't know. So I've gotten a lot better at being like, hey, what I need from you right now is to stop trying to fix this problem, to stop giving me solutions. I need you to move closer to me. I need you to hug me. I need you to hold me. I need you to tell me that that it sucks, that you understand that it sucks and that it's okay and that we're going to get through it together. That's what I need. So let's do that.
It's good. It's brilliant. So how have your needs changed, I guess, over the last, 3 to 4 years as you've grown? And also, what do you see, because obviously you work with so many women, what do you see as the most common threads around needs or breakdowns of relationships, or where men aren't potentially showing up in a way that serves the relationship?
In terms of needs, the first thing that kind of came to mind when you were saying that was this need for validation.
Mm,
And I think we all have a certain need for validation at some level, but I can feel that my need for validation from my partner is so much different than it once was, when I didn't really love myself, appreciate myself, accept myself, see the beauty and power in myself before. So I needed more validation when I was disconnected from
mm,
who I am and what I bring to the table, and how much of a beautiful person that I am, because I really now feel and know that I am a beautiful person, and that I
mm,
have a pure heart, and that, I love myself on a deeper level. And so it's always nice, obviously, to be validated by
mm.
anybody.
Yeah.
um, but I don't find myself craving it as much, or doing things kind of subconsciously in order to get the validation, if that makes
Mm.
sense.
100%. What would you say, based on all the women that you've worked with, what do you see as common themes? And I don't know if um, where the majority of your women are coming from, and if there's different themes, that would show up in America's, to the UK, to Australia. But what are the common kind of themes that you're seeing working with women?
Yeah, I mean, this idea of body image, self-love,
Mm,
confidence, self-assurance, like, I think that's really international. That crosses all
mm,
boundaries and covers all areas of the world, and women everywhere are concerned with those things to some degree. I have yet to meet a woman in my life that has zero experiences around body image, or
mm,
struggling with her body image, or wanting to look a certain way, or feeling like she should look a certain way, or not enjoying the way that she looks for some reason, whatever aspect of her,
mm,
physical body that is. I don't know a woman that hasn't had that experience. So that, I have clients from all over, but I actually do have a lot of clients from Australia as well. And that's like a huge thing. And it's not surprising, because it's indoctrinated into us. We see it everywhere from the time that we're young, of we're supposed to look
mm,
this way. This is how and a lot of it, so interesting. A lot of it is because of, like, to fulfill desire, let's say, to get into a relationship, to be perceived as beautiful, as sexy, as desirable,
mm,
you need to look this certain way, or be this certain way, or behave, perform, act this certain way. So much of what women are experiencing is performative acts, whether you're performing in the bedroom, or you're performing on social media, or you're performing in your day-to-day life with what you wear and how you dress, and what you feel like you need to do to your face and your hair and all of that. It's all sort of like a performance in order
mm.
to, like, hear the applause in the
Yeah.
audience, right? So that's, I think, the biggest thing that I can say crosses all boundaries and covers the entire globe, is women wanting to learn how to let go of some of that performative energy, and really just be themselves and be okay with being themselves.
This is a loaded question. How
How do you do that?
you knew where I was going. How does a bloke? Because again, a lot, I give blokes credit in a lack of awareness with a lot of impact that they have on women's self-esteem and body image and things like that, give them the benefit of the doubt where possible. But what does that look like in terms of supporting women to have a better relationship with their body, to allow them, I hate the word allow when it comes to this dynamic, but it's so indoctrinated, to really, I guess, create a safe container to really encourage them to step into their fullest version, their whole version? What are some things that can either help have the women expand into that, or contract and build more shame, more self esteem issues, whatever it might be? What are some common traits that you see at both ends of the scale?
Well, I think in terms of like what men can do if they have a partner who is working on feeling more confident or wants to be more confident in her body, or is just not feeling 100% confident in her body, which is probably, like I said, every woman has experienced this at some point in her life to some degree. That varies a lot.
Mm.
But like, just like being willing to have gentle conversations with her
Mm.
about how she's feeling or what she needs from you. Like we had that conversation about needs. I think asking your partner, like, what could I do that might make you feel more loved or seen or appreciated? Or how can I support you? Like, I love that you're going on this journey and I think it's awesome. How can I support you? Like, what would make you feel supported? Um, but also creating like an environment of safety for her to be herself, to unravel, to relax and, lean into all of who she is. So I think a lot of times there's criticism that we may not even view as criticism. Like for something as simple as, say, your girlfriend, wife, partner, whoever is really like silly and is like a really funny person. And she, does different voices or makes different faces, or she like is dancing like a lunatic in the kitchen or doing something silly. Like sometimes there's joking, criticism, or sarcasm around that, which can cause embarrassment and then lead that person to sort of close off that piece of their personality a little bit more because it wasn't received in the way that they hoped that maybe it was. So it's not always even just about like her body, but it's like all the parts of her that she's sharing or not sharing need to be met with a level of safety and acceptance, right? So if your partner is being really silly, like join them, laugh with them, go along with it, like be fun. Everything doesn't have to be, and again, it's like this element of performance. Sometimes when we're critical of those things unknowingly, it's because we have our own performative mindset of like, we need to look a certain way and be a certain, oh, that's embarrassing. Why would you do that? We're in the supermarket. Why would you, start twerking? Whatever, but like, we just need to feel that we're safe to be who we are in all moments, in all areas of our life, and that will allow her to feel safer as well, like in her body and her sexuality and all of those things.
Brilliant answer. What does safety look like to you? Just so, because blokes, for many, this will be the first time they've heard the concept around safety as such. What does it look like to you, whether you speaking firsthand from your own relationship or speaking on behalf of women? What are things that, and you kind of described it, but to be able to, I guess, grab something more tangible, what does that look like that, again, builds safety and trust and takes away from it? I guess one visual that I love is really, and this obviously is big in from an indoctrination point of view, is how do you create a safe container as opposed to a cage? And that cage comes with control, which is a very common theme amongst men. But what does that look like, that safety, and how's that built?
So safety for me, it feels like non-judgment.
Mm.
It feels like acceptance. So it doesn't always mean that my partner is going to understand or even be on the same page with me or how I'm acting or how I'm feeling, but that I won't be judged for feeling that way or being that way, right? Whether I'm being emotional or I'm being really silly and I'm dancing around and I'm being a goofball, that I won't be met with, side eye or rolling of the eye or why are you doing that? Or that's embarrassing or stop that or don't cry.
Mm.
Don't say that, please. How to create safety. Don't say, don't cry.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, non-judgment, accepting, allowing what is, right? If she's coming to you in a state of emotion and breakdown, rather than trying to fix, solve, or prevent or stop, stifle the emotional reaction, allow the emotional reaction to be there, allow it to flow, allow her to cry. Instead of saying, don't cry, say, it's okay to cry. Say, I'd love for you to share with me why you're feeling so upset. Let's talk about what happened, right? When someone's being silly or goofy, instead of being like, oh my gosh, like you're so embarrassing, don't do that. Like, laugh with them, join them,
Mm.
be silly and fun with them, right? It's like, I feel like that's what partnership is not, it's me against you, or we're kind of like fighting with this weird like tension. It's like, where you go, I go. And if you're in a certain place, I'm going to meet you there and we're going to get through it together, right? Like it's not me against you, it's me and you against the problem. That's like one of my favorite sayings for
Yeah.
relationship always is, even if the problem feels like it's coming from your partner, trying to approach that as like, there's a problem and you and I are going to go fight it together, right? How can we approach that as a unit rather than going against each other? That creates intense levels of safety.
That for me, and I don't know how many relationships you've had before your 6-year one, that for me stands out as significant, that partnership thing. And I know a lot of females talk about it, but I don't know that many blokes talk about it. But the feeling, exactly as you said, which is like the best feeling, I reckon, is the feeling that you're on the same team. And I think it's actually, unfortunately, I actually think it's quite rare, at least from my experience. I've had it in one other relationship and the one I'm in now. But males appreciate it. I think males appreciate it just as much as the feminine. So yeah, totally resonate with that partnership bit. What for you constitutes a really kind of, and I know we kind of touched on it at the start, but a really conscious relationship, and how has the work that you've done, in particular on yourself, changed your relationship as an individual?
A conscious relationship to me is a relationship in which both people are committed to understanding themselves more deeply. That's a conscious relationship because I think that's how the progress gets made, is not in, okay, I'm learning all these things, so now I'm going to fix my partner, or I'm going to force them to adopt these mindsets, or, these things. And I think this is really common. Whichever partner in the relationship is kind of more into personal development, let's say, I think it's really common that they're like, okay, now I got to get my partner on this, because if they were doing this, then we would be like a super team. And it's a really beautiful sentiment, but I just think that it pushes it pushes the other person away. It
Correct.
like makes them feel like they're being perceived as less than, as not good enough, as not healed or fixed or integrated or spiritual or whatever it is, right? And whenever we feel that we're being viewed in such a way that we need to change, that's not a good feeling, and it doesn't really create really great results. So a conscious relationship is where both people separately on their own terms and in their own time want to learn more about themselves and they want to go deeper, you know? So like for me in this relationship, um my partner was not really into personal development, but he loved that I was learning things and that I found it so interesting and fascinating and that it was helping me change my life. I know some people had the experience of even being met with criticism or judgment from the partner being like, "Oh, that's a bunch of garbage." um so luckily I wasn't met with any of that, but it definitely was like I was doing the work and he wasn't.
Mm.
And I think the best thing that I did was not push that on him and not be like, read this book, listen to this podcast, do this thing, be this way. You need to think differently about money because you have a negative money mindset and it's fucking up our finances. And, like that can so often happen. And so I think that's people may think, oh, to be in a conscious relationship, I need to force my partner to become more conscious. But that's like, I don't know. That's not it for me. That's not it. I think continue doing your work, be committed to your own growth, learning about yourself, understanding your triggers, your attachment styles, the way that you react and respond to life, the way that you see things, your mindsets, your finance, your all the things. And your partner eventually will take notice and be like, wow, that's so interesting. And they might start to ask you questions. And it may take a year or 2 years or 3 years, who knows? But eventually, they will catch on that this work that you're doing is making you a better person. And maybe they can even see how it's making your relationship different and that it's improving the dynamics and the communication of the relationship. And that will allow them or encourage them to come up with their own inspired idea to maybe learn more about themselves. And that's just the truth behind doing more work to be a more conscious couple is it has to be your own idea. Because if it's the other person's idea pushing you towards it, you're just going to be pushed away from it.
Spot on. That is brilliant in itself. And the most common question I get asked from a female is like, how do I nudge him into doing the work? I'm like, do not push.
Always.
It is not going to work well for you. Promise, guaranteed. What last question, what do you think has been the success or the recipe for you over the last 6 years? And, I guess what might have made your relationship successful in the first year could be very different to what's made it, more successful in the sixth year. But what for you has made the relationship what it is for you? Jeez, I'm throwing some big ones at you, aren't I?
Yeah, this is good. This is like my own little reflection time to ponder and think about this relationship that I've been in and what it means and how it's formed. I love this. So, in the beginning stages of the relationship, I think it was really important that there was like this energy of you'd mentioned at the beginning, like adventure and fun and really focusing on, dating each other in a way that felt exciting, you know? Um, like specifically for this relationship, I think the way that it began was so sort of like fantasy, like from a movie, like I went to Europe and I met this guy and we're, running through the city, the streets of Madrid at night, like with an open bottle of wine, like looking at monuments, like it's from a fucking movie. So it's like, how do you, how do you keep that? How do you maintain that? How do you top that? How do you not let that be like just this big spark that then fizzles out? And so I think in the early stages of the relationship, and even still now in some ways, but it was really about like continuing to date each other and having that sense of like courtship. I don't really love that word, but it kind of evokes what I'm trying to say. Taking each other on dates, going out and seeing things, doing things together, being active, traveling, which is unfortunate right now because I know that's like a dead recommendation. But, keeping that sense of like adventure and fun in the relationship is always important. But that was like really a really big thing in the beginning, just because of how our relationship began and the fact that I left my whole family and friends and life and career behind to
Yeah.
come here. There was kind of like a little bit more riding on, okay, well, like, let's hope that it was worth it, because if
Mm,
not, I kind of just messed up my life a little bit for this. Um, Now I think what keeps our relationship going and what is so beautiful about it is that we're just like learning on deeper levels that we love each other's company. And I
mm,
think we were taught this a lot during the pandemic. And I know a lot of people are still in quarantine right now in Australia, but we had that experience more in 2020 over here in Europe. And that time, I think, was really telling for a lot of relationships of if you actually enjoy the company of your partner, or if you're like, "Oh my gosh, it's really hard for me to be in the same space as you for X amount of hours consecutively or days." And so making sure that you're with someone that you genuinely like enjoy their company. It's not just because, there's this like fiery sexual element or whatever, but that you actually want to hang out with them and that you enjoy spending time with them. That's like the biggest thing for us now. Quality time is one of my main love languages, and
mm,
it's not one of my partners. And so before, we were forced to stay in the same house together without leaving, even for exercise. We weren't even allowed to go outside to exercise for 4 months. Um, he was able to learn that he actually likes quality time with me.
good. This is important.
Which is lucky, which is, yes, so good. But so yeah, and like love languages obviously are a huge thing.
Mm,
Understand your partner's love language. That was big for us. When I found out his love language is gifts, I was like, this makes so much sense. And I've been doing it so wrong. I apologize.
yeah, perfect. Sam, that is brilliant. And there's plenty of juice for both guys and girls in all of that. If people are going to find out a little bit more about you, where's the best spot to find you?
Yeah, you guys can come find me I mainly hang out on Instagram. My handle is _Samantha Daily. You can find me at the same name on TikTok, and I have a podcast show of my own also that's called Makeshift Happen if you want more.
Perfect. Awesome. Thanks, Sam.
Thank you.